Well, hi guys, and welcome back to what I guess we can call the best Baseball Stars series on YouTube. At least I'm not aware of any other ones, so that means that we must be the best. So we're going to go ahead and just switch straight on over here for you. We can watch a little bit of this other game as I go ahead and pull out the old controller and get us going here. So if you're new to this series, basically what we're doing is we're playing through Baseball Stars. We're doing it the right way in that there's only one team, as you can see that we have that's homemade, and we're turning them into the Peanuts gang, sort of one person at a time. Our most recent, I guess, I don't know what to call it. Our most recent success, maybe, has been getting Violet up to 10 hitting and 10 batting. We just need her defense up a little bit more. Once her defense is up, she'll probably end up playing left field in place of this guy, who's got pretty good defensive ratings but can't hit. The other person that we're kind of looking at is requested is to see if we can get Linus up a little bit more. The hitting of 8 is probably one of the things that's harming him and causing him to have a lot of balls that are not quite flying out of there. Pigpen, meanwhile, is hitting of 10, batting of 11. But his defense is not all that great, so we'll see what we can do sort of with him. Pigpen still has 30 points to go. We'll try to get him probably to 15-15, I'm guessing, but you know, maybe next we work on the defense. I don't know. We'll figure something out and we'll make it happen the way that we need to make it happen. So we'll go ahead here and start playing our league games. We have 17 games played, which means we have 8 more to go. And so we'll go play this one again. They have Nobe on the mound, which means that we have pitcher B1 on the mound. Now, the reason why not all of these players have names, if you're new to this, and welcome to you if you are, is because we only want to give names to the people who are going to last long term. And for me, that means that they're going to have a potential rating of 70 or higher. Fortunately, we do have a number of players who have potential ratings of 70 or higher, but there are a couple of players who aren't quite there. And the plan, at least temporarily, is to just spend money on rookies and replace those players kind of slowly. We do have some characters, as people keep reminding me, who haven't been built or haven't been put in the game yet. So, for example, we do need to get Snoopy in at some point in time. I'm guessing that Snoopy is going to be a male character. Unfortunately, I can't force the game to give me a dog. Although it would be really cool if I could, but that is unfortunately not going to happen in this game. And then, of course, since it's Snoopy, he plays, what, like shortstop, right? So we're going to have somebody who's a really good hitter and a really good fielder. We're going to be looking for that sort of diamond in the rough, you know, really, really high potential ability player as a rookie, and then we'll work on getting him built up. It's going to take a little while, and that's sort of the way that this game works. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff to look forward in the future, and we're going to have a whole bunch of videos coming up as this save sort of continues along. So far, though, it's been a lot of fun. We've played mostly just against the SNK Crushers, and we advanced from barely being able to beat them to being able to beat them pretty easily. Part of that has been because we've had improvements to the team, and part of that is because I've become increasingly able to differentiate between balls and strikes. For example, that is a ball. So the more that you can do that, the easier the game becomes, and the more you play it, the more you kind of get used to some of the idiosyncrasies and other stuff that happens. Doesn't mean that we have necessarily like a super team that's always going to win, and stuff like that happens sometimes where you're like, how was that a strike? That ball hit me. But whatever. You never know what you're going to get with baseball, right? So that's kind of what's been going on here on this channel. In case you are new to this, or you've been missing it, or you've been like actually working or going to school or doing any of those other things that I can't imagine why in the world you'd want to do anything like that. And, you know, I really do mean it, especially when it comes to going to school, because apparently around here where there's still snow on the ground and we haven't had anything above freezing for a week, apparently school is completely off the books. Our local school district canceled the entire week's worth of school, and it's supposed to warm up on Monday, so I'm guessing that they're going to force the kids to go on Monday. Which might be a nice thing. I think that my own children probably need to go back to school one of these days and stop watching YouTube on the iPad. But you, on the other hand, should continue watching at least this series because it's good for you. And if you don't understand that, you should keep watching and you'll get it the more that you watch. Alright, so let's see what we can do here. Pigpen kind of disappointed us by not hitting a home run. We've been getting kind of used to his ability to sock home runs left and right. Linus, meanwhile, is really, really slow. So after we get his batting up a little bit higher, we're going to need Linus to go take some speed lessons. We have a number of players, by the way, who are kind of slow, and if they were a little bit faster, we probably could score more runs. But at that time, it didn't hurt him too much, so we have runners in second and third now. And this is kind of what it's been like. Again, if you haven't really been watching the series at all up to now, this is what the last couple of games have been like, basically. It's we get a bunch of runners on, and then all of a sudden we start scoring a whole bunch of runs. So the other thing we've been working on is trying to work their pitcher down a little bit. Fortunately for us, we were able to get back in time. Unfortunately for us, they called that a strike. All right. So, the other big news that we have, as always, is the Baseball Replay Journal blog, which if you haven't checked it out, you probably should. Today's post is probably one of my all-time favorites, if not my all-time favorite that I've written up. So I found this Hugh Fullerton article from 1918. I was doing a little bit of research into 1918 for another project that you guys are going to see before too long. Anyway, I was looking up stuff about actually the minor league system of 1918. So what happened back then is, of 1919, I should say. What happened back at the end of 1918 is the minor leagues finally had it up to here, you know, with the major leagues and with the meddling and stuff. The big complaint the minor leagues had back then was the major league draft, right? Because the draft meant that minor league teams were going to end up losing their best players for a very, very small sum of money. And so the minor leagues announced that they were going to break the national agreement. What that did is it meant that major league teams, if they wanted to pick up minor league players, had to pay, you know, full price, whatever it was that the minor league team wanted. Ban Johnson had tried to play this off as like, oh, well, you know, if we end up doing this, you guys are going to regret it one day and all of this. There's a really cool Saber article about this that I've been sort of looking through. In the end, Ban Johnson was 100% wrong. Actually, what happened is the price of players went like through the roof for obvious reasons, right? It's because, you know, the minor leagues now sort of could name their price for their guys. And you had owners like Jack Dunn, who really, really did not want to lose any of his best players to the major leagues ever again. He was still, you know, smarting over the fact that Babe Ruth had been purchased by the Boston Red Sox back in right before World War I. That itself is an interesting story. I talked about it in a video that I did a while ago, so none of you have probably seen it. But the story behind that is that you know, Dunn was kind of forced in that position not by the war, because the United States wasn't in the war yet. He was forced into it by the Federal League. So the Federal League had come along into Baltimore with the Baltimore Terrapins and had taken a lot of the business away from the old Orioles. Now, the Terrapins themselves were probably upset that the Orioles were still around, right, because they had to sort of share, you know, territory with this other team that was much more established. Oh, it just barely got in there in time. That was Linus. Linus having a good game today. As I regale you with the stories from long, long ago. So, you know, Jack Dunn was really upset about it. He had to sell Babe Ruth for a lot less than he wanted to get from him. He only got half of a season out of him, basically, before he went to Boston. And what made matters worse, especially there in 1919 at the very beginning of the season, is Babe Ruth went and visited with the world champion Boston Red Sox in Baltimore, and Babe Ruth only hit 4 home runs in the game that they had, like right before the Major League season started. So that must have really smarted, you know, for the Babe to come back and demonstrate that he had this kind of power and this kind of ability. 1919, of course, was the season that Babe Ruth hit 29 home runs. So anyway, as you can imagine, there wasn't exactly a lot of appetite among minor league owners for you know, going back and playing this game that the national agreement wanted them to play, and the old national commission wanted them to do this and that and the other. So they basically told, you know, Ban Johnson to go stick it. After that, what ended up happening in the end by, I think, 1921 or 1922 is Commissioner Landis finally sort of reestablished the old system of doing things, which is the reason why you still have a minor league system today. even then it's kind of sketchy, right? Like I find all of these newspaper articles all the time talking about how, well, maybe that was not the right pitch to throw. Who was that at bat? You have to let me know. A 5-1, I guess we're not going to dominate, and that was their number 4 hitter, which is the man that we fear. What is his name again? Is it Paul, I think it is, who's got now, I think, 8 home runs against us. So anyway, we keep giving up the long ball to the same guy, and I'm not sure there's much I can do about it. We need to get better pitchers. But all in good time. All in good time. Anyway, so while I was looking this up, I found this article by Hugh Fullerton, just totally by accident, who was talking about this old baseball player named Sam Mertes. And Mertes is one of these guys. If you've played a lot of baseball sims and you've played around with seasons from before 1910, you know his name. He played originally for the Chicago Cubs, called the Orphans, in like 1900. Went over to the White Sox as soon as the White Sox became a thing. Eventually followed John McGraw to the American League and ended up playing with the New York Giants for a number of years, for some of their best years. Mertes is an interesting guy because he was like absolutely like monstrously large. I mean, this guy was a bodybuilder, like a serious bodybuilder. Anyway, Hugh Fullerton had a little bit of fun with this article. There's this sort of like anecdote that he writes about 1918. It refers to an article that Fullerton had written back in 1900. So while Fullerton was working for the Chicago Tribune in 1900, he wrote this game he wrote a game summary where he talked about how Mertes had threatened to give any baseball writer a black eye who said that he made an error. And so when Mertes, who was like 27 at the time, when he made an error in this game against the New York Giants, the Giants 1900 were an awful team, right? But Chicago lost the first game of the doubleheader, and all this stuff. Mertes makes an error, and so Fullerton, in all of his wisdom, writes that Mertes, if he had been playing in France, he would have made what they called a gaucherie. And so gaucherie is not the sound that you make when you sneeze. Gaucherie means like an error or like a mistake in judgment or something like that, right? And the idea, I guess, was to write sort of a polite thing. And Fullerton continues to say in this article, the little bit about, if I had written error, then I would have gotten socked right in the eye. Now, as you probably know, 1900 is definitely back in the days when, the players and the sports writers were kind of chummy with each other, right? They would end up traveling on the trains together, you'd end up getting to know each other over time and all of this stuff. But Hugh Fullerton was always one who was going to use like a good anecdote to, sort of play up the color of the age and, give the players some life and stuff like that. And so as the years went by, Fullerton would constantly write articles about Mertes and about this thing. There was sort of like this set type of article that he had that he kind of repeated over and over again over the years. In fact, I think some newspapers kind of held it, in reserve in case they had any filler, space they needed to fill up. Anyway, the article, the story behind this changed to the point where Fullerton was basically being assaulted by Mertes, which is something that is kind of funny when you read again the original article. The insinuation is pretty clear that he was saying that Mertes would have only done this if he'd written about him in English or something like that. You can read the original articles there over on the blog post. This is going to be a fair ball. So we've had some good luck so far. We haven't had a gaucherie yet. So anyway, that's kind of what I should have had Violet hit there, shouldn't I? I'm not thinking. I'm thinking too much about whatever I'm talking about. That's kind of sort of what the story behind that article was and all of that stuff. And Fullerton in the end definitely made the most out of it. Because this thing is reprinted in newspapers really up through the end of World War I. In the end, Mertes is sort of a player that's mostly forgotten about unless you're like me, unless you spend a lot of time reading this stuff. I did discover something else that was interesting, though, which is that back in 1896, Patsy Tebow, who was the manager of the old Cleveland Spiders back when they were good, Patsy Tebow, once upon a time, got very, very upset with a sports writer who had written something or other bad about him, and he ended up actually punching the guy out. And it prompted all sorts of articles that were very, very critical of him, right? So I saw that, and the funny thing is that in one of these articles about Tebow, it wasn't one about him fighting, but it was an earlier article about Tebow, that French word gaucherie came up again. That's kind of how I found this thing from 1896, and I think it was a Chicago Tribune article, which I think was actually written by Hugh Fullerton, probably near the beginning of his time with the Tribune. I mean, because I don't know that there were a whole bunch of other sports writers around the United States at that time who were going to start sticking French words in the middle of their writing for flavor or whatever. It's the sort of writer that Fullerton was. Anyway, it's really, really interesting stuff, because I keep thinking, I wonder if Hugh Fullerton knew about this Patsy Tebow story, decided to make that part of his Murty story over time, just to sort of see what would happen, and all that stuff. And of course, nobody knew any better, right? It's not like he had the Society for American Baseball Research at that time. Nobody's really taking a close look at anything. Nobody has a copy of any of these newspapers. Nobody has microfilm scans, microfilm machines. I don't think were even invented yet, right? Nobody has scanned copies of this and that or any of that stuff, right? So you can basically say whatever it is you want. Nobody's going to fact check you, right? That's what the newspaper does. So anyway, pretty interesting stuff. Hugh Fullerton, of course, as you know, is mostly known not for making fun of Sam Mertes and other players, but rather is known for his expose on the Black Sox scandal, which brings us, of course, back to 1919. So we all come full circle in the end. And the other interesting thing about this is that the Black Sox scandal was not necessarily first made public there, but it was first really brought to the attention of a lot of people when the New York World published a Hugh Fullerton article about it. Fullerton at the time, I'm not sure what paper he was actually writing for in 1920 when this was published, but there was this article in which he not only insinuated that that World Series games were thrown, but he basically went straight out and said it and was talking about what management's response to this is going to be from the Chicago standpoint. It's very, very interesting. And it's another one of those things that people over time generally tend to forget about. We usually think about 1919 in terms of, the crooked Black Sox and all this other stuff. What you forget about is sort of what the overall sporting culture was like, what the newspapers were like, and stuff like that. And the reason why you forget about it, of course, is because you don't know about it. Nobody tells you anything about it unless you run across somebody kind of crazy like me who's going to, play a game of Baseball Stars and just talk about stuff from 100-something years ago. So there you have it. You've come to the right place. And if this is the wrong place, you should make it the right place, because you should be interested in this stuff, right? If you like the sport of baseball, you should at least have some sort of curiosity about its history. So anyway, there you go. That's the fascinating article that I wrote today. The article, of course, is much better written than all of my ranting and raving about it while I play Baseball Stars. But, of course, if you just spend all of your time reading articles that I write, you're not going to have the joy of watching games and games and games of Baseball Stars and seeing what we can do with this team that still has a lot of holes. I'm thinking about the holes that this team has as I'm trying to get Sally to run a hit and run, and I'm thinking, am I crazy? I think she has a running of 0. Actually, I think that they are going to concede second base. So defensive indifference is how you would score that. I don't remember if this game actually keeps track of stolen bases or not. If it does, I'd be interested to know if they actually gave her a steal. They shouldn't. That should be a defensive indifference. But it doesn't matter anyway. We get our run, we get a double once again, and it's 8-1. Think, though, about how much more boring this would be if I wasn't telling you all sorts of random stories about whatever thing is on my mind or whatever's going on in baseball history or whatever we have, right? That's sort of what gives this channel its flavor. At least I hope you feel that way. And speaking of flavor, one of the other things that I've noticed is that when you go back and you read really good baseball literature, or when you, listen to, say, like Vin Scully do a game, or Red Barber, or someone like that, what you'll notice about a lot of these guys is that they not only have a lot of flavor, but they're able to insert their flavor into the game of baseball. So you know, in terms of, for example, Vince Scully, if you take the time to listen to a lot of his old broadcasts, one of the things that you'll notice is that Scully will oftentimes, you know, not only regale you with stories and things. Anybody can do that, right? Anybody can go look up a story and memorize it and tell it to you. He would also do a very, very good job of sort of describing things as it would happen in front of you, right? So like that little excuse me swing, you know, for a little pop-up, you know, sort of like a little floater in the air, right? Or something like that. And I think that's sort of the natural thing that comes along with the world of the sport on the radio, where you know that you have an audience that can't see a thing that you're talking about. And so you've got to figure out a way to describe the action to somebody who can't see it, right? Or if you're Red Barber, you have to figure out a way to describe the action to somebody who not only cannot see it, but who likely has never seen baseball before in their life and doesn't know what you're talking about. I found an article about Red Barber. This was also on the blog a little while ago. I found an article about Red Barber that was talking about, this is from Brooklyn, I want to say like 1939, 1940, something like that. But they were talking about how Barber was really a favorite among some of the housewives and stuff like that. And they talk about, you know, these poor women who are kind of stuck at home. Yeah, Paul is his name. Paul is the one who hit the home run. You know, but they would enjoy listening to Red Barber when he would do the Brooklyn Dodgers games, you know, and the reason why is because Red Barber would tell them everything that they needed to know about the sport, right, and would have a way to, you know, describe the sport to them that was vivid in their minds and that made a lot of sense and all of that stuff, you know, and that's what he would do as opposed to what a lot of broadcasters today do. So one of the things I've noticed, that's one way, by the way, to not have Pigpen hit a home run. You just hit him with a pitch. You know, so as opposed to broadcasters today who seem to rant and rave a lot, like I was watching this thing on YouTube that had calls of the end of the World Series this past year, and the Los Angeles Dodgers announcer is like standing up in the booth. They got a video of him standing up and he's shouting and all this stuff. And you go listen to Red Barber, Vince Scully, you don't have anybody shouting. Instead, they're trying to figure out a way to use the poetry of language to tell you what's happening. And I'm going to tell you that even years and years from now, people are going to care a lot more about what Red Barber and Vince Scully and that type of broadcaster had to say than any of these guys who are up there shouting and screaming and trying to act like, you know, there's some YouTuber who just, I don't know, is like, oh my gosh, look at this amazing thing I just won or whatever, you know. It's not a style that really lasts that long. It's not a style that really, you know, gets a lot of positive attention from people who listen to it. It's not something that you really want to listen to over and over again. One of these days, I am going to do a video that focuses on the Vince Scully broadcasting style. I have a whole collection of broadcasts to watch of his that I haven't really started yet. Which is, you know, sort of the spirit behind all of these projects. By the way, I'm going to hit this guy so that we don't have to have Charlie Brown pitch in this game, since he's our starter tomorrow. And look at that, we get a base hit, it's 10-1. Now's about the time that we could use better leadoff hitters. We need to get Lucy up there because we want her to hit first, because she always tends to get a base hit. She's always on base. She's got that magnetism about her, you know. Let's see if the game ends right here. Yep. Told you. Anyway, so we'll have more about, you know, the Vince Scully style and me, you know, shilling out my blog and stuff like that tomorrow, where we're going to have another extensive video that goes into detail about all of these subjects we care about. Pitcher D1, by the way, is 5-0, and the only blemish was Paul hitting his 8th home run. We had 31,000 people there. $52,000 comes our way, and we know exactly what it is that we want to do with it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go straight over for Violet. We're going to buy one. Ooh, we got 6. How about that? So now please tell me where you want me to play her, now that we've got her up to 10. And the other one we want is Linus. And we only get 2, but see, we get his hitting up to 10, and that's kind of the thing that we wanted to do. That should help us with Linus. We only have $3,000 left. We can't really update anybody else. That's kind of going to be the end of this, but this means that Violet should be good enough to start. Now, what I do with her from now on, I don't exactly know. I think that what we're going to do is we're going to try to get a bunch of these guys up to 30,000. So it's probably Shermie's the one we're going to pick on next. Again, I probably will improve his hitting and batting first, and then we'll slowly build up the defense. Franklin has really good defense, so maybe we actually pick on him next. We can always improve his prestige. That would give us a little bit more money. Lucy's also 20,000, also has good defense, so she has full prestige, so we could give her some hitting and batting. We probably will actually do Franklin next time, assuming that we win again. You never know. And then we still have a long way to go with Frida, but she has her prestige up. And Sally, maybe a little bit more room for a little bit more prestige. But, you know, we're really getting there, and you can tell that we're really getting there because we've gotten to the point in this game where winning a game against the SNK Crushers is giving us, what was it, like $50,000. And what that means as we go through this in the long term is that eventually when we start playing and beating, like, you know, lovely ladies and teams like that, we're going to get a lot of money. And that's definitely what we want to see. We want to see a lot of that money coming in, which is going to make it a lot easier for us to get more upgrades and to get like rookies and to, you know, build them up right away. That should speed things up a little bit, assuming we can get to the point where we can beat them. That's the part of this game that's hard. So anyway, there you have it. Thank you as always for tuning in. I'll have more of this for you tomorrow. I'm not sure what time I will. I'm going to try to do this a little bit earlier. I'm kind of behind on videos right now, so it's going to be an interesting afternoon. So I'm kind of like pushing my way through a bunch of this stuff so that we can get on to other things we need to do so we can then do the other things we want to do. So long story short, more stuff is coming. I'll talk to you later. Bye.